Are you sick of waking up with anxiety and regret after drinking? I get it. I was a weekend binge drinker, fooling myself into believing I was detoxing all week, only to retox every weekend and live completely outside of alignment with my values. As a former personal trainer who cared about health, that disconnect pushed me to finally make a change. I'm Maureen Bankovich, and this is Sober Fit Life, a podcast where we get real about alcohol, share powerful stories, and learn from wellness experts so you can thrive physically, mentally, and emotionally. Let's get sober fit. Have you ever Googled, "Am I an alcoholic?" Me too. And here's the thing, it's not a helpful question. Those quizzes just slap on a label. Yes, you are. No, you're not. But what if it's not about the label and more about how drinking actually makes you feel? That's why I created Am I Drinking Too Much? It's the quiz I wish had existed when I was searching. No scare tactics, no rock bottom required. You'll get your results and a free guide that explains gray area drinking, plus 3 science-backed strategies to reduce or interrupt cravings. Take it at soberfitchick.com/MI. That's MI, as in, am I drinking too much? soberfitchick.com/MI. Hey everybody, welcome back to Sober Fit Life. I am so beyond excited today for my guest, but before I officially introduce her, I would like to give you a little background. So in 2018, what I needed was somebody to acknowledge my biggest fear and concern that I already knew was that I was drinking too much, but no one around me wanted to hear it. My friends would say, "You're fine. You're just being too hard on yourself." My husband would say, "You just need to stick to 2." And even my doctor would brush it off. "You're healthy, you're athletic." And then I found Andrea Owen. I actually found her book, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit. And boy, did I want to know how to do that. So I reached out to her after reading the book. I had never heard of coaching or business coaching. That at the time, that's what I thought I was going for, was business coaching. So I reached out to her and filled out her intake form. And all the questions I answered were all around my business and how I was struggling with my business. And my father had just passed away, and, my grief. And that last question, though, it said, "Is there anything else, you want to tell me about?" And I just put, "Yeah, I think I'm drinking too much." So when we met and we talked about this intake form and I went through everything, she said, "Well, let's talk about that last question, that you think you're drinking too much, because that could be the thing that's keeping you stuck." And it was like I finally was seen and heard. Somebody acknowledged it. And I get chills right now. I'm going to get maybe a little emotional because this was the beginning, you guys, of my life changing. So this is why Andrea Owen is a very special guest for me today on Sober Fit Life. So let me formally introduce her. Andrea Owen is a global speaker, certified life coach, and the author of 3 powerful books: 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, Make Some Noise, and I believe there's another one coming down the pike that we might talk about. But she's helped thousands of women ditch perfectionism, people-pleasing, and control so they can live bold, authentic lives. Her no BS, deeply compassionate, and very funny sometimes style works as a catalyst, and it certainly did in my own journey. And today we'll talk about specifically about alcohol and numbing and other coping behaviors and what it really means to stop feeling like shit. So Andrea, welcome to Sober Fit Life. I am so beyond grateful that you're here.
Oh my God, one of my favorite introductions of all time. I just am humbled by everything that you said and just honored to have been a part of such a big transformation for you. So thank you for having me.
Yes. I mean, back in 2018, I thought I was just going to get some help on how to run my business that I hated.
And you did.
Yes. I did. Well, actually, you helped me say, you're in this job that you hate. Why do you want to stay there?
I remember specifically one question that I asked you, and it has stuck with me because it is such a risk to ask. It doesn't have anything to do about drinking, but I do think it'll be helpful. Sorry to jump in, but
it's fine.
When I think about you, I think about this one question that I asked you because you had brought the same topic to, I think, at least 3 sessions, and we were going around in circles about it, and you were pushing back. And I finally said, "This is the 3rd time that you've brought this. I've coached you on it. I'm getting tired of hearing about it. I'm sure you are sick and tired of thinking about it, bringing it to coaching. So, how bad does it have to get in order for you to make a change to benefit you? And so, you didn't fire me as a coach. Thank you. But it was a rare moment in coaching where we take a risk with our clients. Only the people that we know can handle that kind of tough love.
Yeah, I needed that because,
Mhm.
as you know, drinking is also an addictive behavior, and I knew I had to change, but I was afraid. I was afraid what it would look like, what my friends would
Yeah.
say, how would I socialize, how would I deal with stuff, because that's what I was using it for, an unhealthy coping mechanism. So yeah, I needed to be called out. And I think what also helped me was you were so relatable as you are. You're just down to earth and you share your story, and hearing your story I think is so important. Would you go back and share a little bit about your own personal story, how you got into this,
Yeah.
and especially around the alcohol piece, since this is sober fit
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
So I'll give kind of like a broad overview of how I got there and then how I got to be a sober person. And it actually starts back in the 90s, when we were all a little bit younger. And I was married to my first husband. And I was also very interested in finishing my degree in exercise physiology. I
Mhm.
knew I wanted to be somewhere in the fitness industry. And then I found life coaching. So this was around 2002. Nobody knew what it was. And I remember I was on the internet. This was like before laptops even. Like it was like on
Right.
our desktop that was like in our bedroom. And I said to him, "This sounds like the raddest job ever." And like that was made for me. Like, are you kidding? Because I thought about being a therapist and I'm like, I don't want to sit with people's feelings because I was not ready to sit with my own even. So
Mhm.
I said to him, I think I would be really good at this, but I'm young and I think that I would need more life experience in order to be a really great coach. And then a couple of years after that, be careful what you wish for. The
Yeah.
universe is hilarious. And he ended up, we'd been married for a couple of years. He had an affair with our neighbor, got her pregnant right when we were
Oof.
talking about trying to conceive our first child and start a family. And so that started the trajectory of really my life completely falling apart.
Mhm.
Up until then, I had really struggled with love addiction and codependency. And wasn't ready to get help from it. But when my marriage fell apart and then I entered another really bad, even worse, toxic relationship, I woke up one day and said, you know what? Maybe it's me. Not to
Taking
let these
ownership.
people off the hook. Yeah. I mean, like they did some really crappy things to me, but
Yes.
also I'm the common denominator that didn't listen to my
Mhm.
gut that told me like not to, be in relationships with these people. So that really started my personal growth journey. So that was around 2007. I started my personal growth journey. I really started to look into love addiction and codependency,
Mhm.
which are what we call process addictions. And it's a lot of the way that we think and believe and the way we handle our emotions in an unhealthy way. And then from there, I started my life coaching business, got remarried, had a couple kids. And then in 2011, I had that moment that you did where I was like, I think that my drinking is not healthy for me.
Mhm.
And on the outside, I had a similar experience to you. Like I would mention it to a couple of my friends and they were like, no,
Right.
because like we have this caricature almost of what a quote unquote alcoholic is. And
Right.
it wasn't me. Um, I was a youngish mom. I had just started a business that was looked like it was going to be doing
Mhm.
well. I was married. I had a mortgage, like all of these things where I was like keeping it together. I was very high functioning, but something kept tapping me on the shoulder. It was my intuition that said, maybe it's not healthy to pour wine into an empty Diet Coke can and go ride bikes with your kids outside at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's like these
Yeah.
little things, like these little taps on the shoulder. And so, what ended up happening is I am the type of person, and maybe it's because I work in personal growth, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I couldn't sit with that knowledge for long. It was just a handful of months before I called a friend like you did. You told somebody that you trusted, and that was me.
Yeah.
So when it happened to me, I knew I had a friend that had been in, she was also a life coach. She'd been in recovery for years at that point. And it was funny because I don't know if this was your experience when you wrote that in your intake packet, but when I told my friend Courtney, I was like, hey, I think I might have an issue with my drinking. Like I expected her to like gasp and just be like, oh my God, and just like judge me a little bit.
Yeah.
It was totally no big deal. She just was like, okay, let's talk about it. And I was like, You mean it's just a conversation? I was so afraid of what anyone would think, even people who were in recovery. I had just zoomed in on my own shame around it
Right.
because the shame and stigma is still very much alive, even
Yes.
now in 2025. And so that was kind of it. I got sober. I don't have a rock bottom story. My
Hmm.
rock bottom story was years before in my codependency with these two relationships. But when I quit drinking, I realized like I started to heal from my codependency and those behaviors, and I just replaced it with drinking because that's
Hmm.
right when my drinking picked up.
Makes
And
sense.
so it was very easy for me to just say, okay, this is what's happening. I am not somebody who can abstain or who can moderate. That sounds like
Right.
torture to me. I need to just abstain from drinking. It's not good for me. And so that was September 2011. I've been sober ever since.
Yeah. And then you did the same thing with me. You're like, let's just have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
And that was so helpful instead of people denying it or brushing it off. And now, of course, coaching in this arena, I now realize that was more about them and their
Yeah.
concerns. If I were to change my drinking, what would that, how would that affect
Who are
them?
you to them if you
Yeah,
don't drink anymore?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens a lot in friendships. In a lot of people have jobs where I've coached a fair amount of women in sales, and they've told me my job it revolves around drinking, like entertaining clients. That's what I do. I can't quit.
Yep.
So sometimes that's a factor. And I was someone who was previously in the fitness industry.
Hmm.
And,
We had that in
I would
common.
drink an entire bottle of wine and the next morning get up and go for a run with two babies in a baby jogger who liked to pull the canopy over. So it made it even harder for me to push them against the wind.
The
And
resistance.
I looked at that like a badge of honor. Like, look at me. I can drink an entire bottle of wine,
Yeah.
not feel great the next morning, but still get up and like bulldoze through a run. Like I looked at that and used it as an excuse as to why I didn't have a problem.
Well, me too. That's what kept me stuck for so long. Being this personal trainer, teaching classes hungover. I'm like, I got it
Mhm.
together. I can still do that. Well, youth was one thing, right? So as
Yeah.
that starts to go away, you don't metabolize alcohol as well. But it was
Yeah.
starting to really affect my mental health. But the big thing was, and you helped me to see this, was it was a coping mechanism for a job
Mhm.
that I hated. My father had passed. My mother had dementia. I had a lot of grief that I didn't want to deal with.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to remove that first for me personally, I had to remove that first coping mechanism to look at all the other ones that you talk about that I identified with so much: perfectionism, self-sabotage, which I think drinking can be that.
Yeah.
So you helped me
Yeah.
to see that. So it was just so monumental in my life.
Thank you. I'm so glad. Like I'm honored. And it's I want to say this though. Um, I want to back up a little bit because
Yeah.
what you're pointing to, and I think this would be helpful for the listeners,
Hmm.
whether they are someone receiving the message that someone gives them, a close friend or family member that they're struggling with their drinking or some other kind of um, addiction or behavior that they don't like, or they're the person telling someone else, is that at the end of the day, all of us want, all of us really want is to be seen and heard in our experience and our emotions. That's it.
Yes.
That's it. I saw this from the beginning, even when I would run retreats and things like that. And I would try to pack all this stuff in and workshops and let's talk about this and let's do this activity and this, let's do skits and all this stuff. It's like at the end of the day, people just want to come and tell their story and know that
Hmm.
they're not alone and have people look them in the face and say, me too, or I see you,
Yeah.
or that sounds like it sucks. I don't know what that's like, but I know what something similar feels like. Like that's all we really want. And so I think that when you can find that person,
Yes.
treat them right, hold on to them.
Hmm. So
Whether
important.
you're paying them as a therapist or coach, or they're one of your in real life friends, and also express gratitude towards that because that is so paramount to just human connection.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And then, after you helped me to not be afraid to be vulnerable, because I took your Daring Way
That's right, you
workshop,
did. That was a big program.
big program, and that whole concept. And I'd love for you to get into this. I didn't understand what curiosity meant. I had no idea
Mhm.
how to show myself self compassion. And then that vulnerability actually kills shame, that whole concept, and really those things, again, really changed my whole outlook. But can you explain why? I know why, but I want you to, or my audience to hear it from you. Why is curiosity so important? I know awareness
Yeah.
comes first, but then
Mhm.
why
Yeah.
curiosity? And what does it mean?
Curiosity is one of the sort of pillars in my coach training school that I went to, the Coaches Training Institute. And it
Mm-hmm.
was something that I never, obviously, I know what curiosity is, but I never looked at it as a tool for personal growth. And
Right.
now I think it's one of the most important tools for personal growth. To answer your question, I think that when people really stop to think about it, they would be surprised at how many assumptions that we come to every day
Right.
about other people, about ourselves, about outcomes, about circumstances, everything, as well as like expectations that we have of ourselves and other people and of
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
circumstances. So I'll give an example. Maybe this is a little bit easier. So around the conversation of drinking, if I were to, and as a coach, this is what we do. We come at conversations with curiosity instead of, oh, I have all the answers
Right.
that you need to do. That's consulting. Like,
Yep.
and I can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I can give you advice all day long, but like true coaching is really just asking questions from a place of curiosity. So I would ask you things like, well, what do you get out of drinking? Or if you can, curiosity is like acting like you really don't know anything about the
Mm.
situation, and you are just like, you got your little flashlight and you're a detective and you're trying to figure things out. And the reason that it's important is because it allows you to try to come at the situation with no preconceived notions or bias.
Yes.
So I don't, when you told me that in your intake, like I don't immediately come to the conclusion that you should stop drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, tell me more, say more.
Right.
And it's my job to ask you questions that are genuinely curious so that you can hopefully dig around a little bit in not just your mind, but like in your heart and soul and your intuition so that you can find the clarity that you need. Because it's not about, as a coach, it's not, and people can coach themselves all day long too. That's why I'm digging into this, but it's like, it's
Yeah.
really not about, the end goal. I would hope for people that the end goal is just getting a little bit more clarity, maybe not coming to a solution or hard and fast answer,
Right.
but just clarity. Can we have that be the goal? And I think that one of the things that I've started saying a lot lately is curiosity over control. I
I like
started to
that.
use curiosity because I left my second marriage a couple years ago, and I'm in a new relationship. It's actually 8 months today,
Mm-hmm.
and we have made a pact now that we're this age. We have a lot of experience in relationships,
Yeah.
and one of the things that we're doing with intention is curiosity over
Yeah.
control.
Yeah.
Because many times, even in our love relationships, we are trying to control the other person. We're trying to control the outcome of like a please don't leave me type of thing, or
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
please don't do anything that I don't like or that will hurt me. And so if you can choose curiosity,
Yeah. And
it
you
will
introduced
always
that
benefit you.
concept to me. And then I was able to start being curious with myself. Um,
Hmm.
and then, but the other piece is self-compassion. I truly
Yes.
did not know what that meant to be to myself.
Do you remember? I remember there was a little bit of a um, kind of like a flag that was raised. Like sometimes the hair stands up on the back of my neck when I'm talking to clients.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened when we were working together because we were talking about things that you wanted to change. And I can't remember what it was related to, but I don't think it was about drinking. It was about ancillary things like
Mm-hmm.
working out and
Yeah.
things like that.
Business
And you
too.
said, I just need to be more disciplined.
Yes.
And the hair stood
Yes.
up on the back of my neck. And I was like, and it's technically not my job to say things like, are you sure about that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, because then I have an agenda and I'm making an assumption, but there was something that told me that is not the solution for you.
Right.
Like you don't need to push yourself harder. You don't need to be more productive. You don't need to check more things off the list. What you need is to actually like kind of grab yourself by the hair and look inside, like what at the grief
Yes.
that you
It was
haven't
the
dealt
grief.
with,
Yeah.
the pressure and the stress of like doing things that you don't want to do. Anyway, so that stands out to me in our work together too. What was your experience of that?
Yes, I agree because that was my answer. We'll try harder, do
Right.
more, perfectionism. you know, really being
Achievement.
hard on myself. And then the drinking was to not feel all the things I was feeling. I didn't want to
Mhm.
face the things. And so, yeah, again, I think, and that's what I've learned from you too, is to sometimes go with your intuition as a coach as well. I mean, I know it's
Yeah,
not pure coaching, but sometimes, that
it
comes to
is.
you. And I was so glad that you, again, said that to me. So it was, as I said, it was 2018, but it wasn't until 2021 that I actually stopped drinking, but I was on that journey. You had planted all
Yeah.
those seeds. Um, and that's what was so important. And I also want to like flip to your book, How to Stop
Okay.
Feeling Like Shit.
Here's
And,
this one.
you talk about
Right here.
14 coping
Here.
mechanisms,
There are
right?
14 habits. Yeah, coping
14. There it
mechanisms.
is. There's the yellow
Mhm.
cover, How to Stop
Yeah,
Feeling
this
Like
is
Shit. I
the
have the white
revised
one.
version.
Yeah. And I think the main ones, I was just listening to your current program, which is like the 5-day How to
Mhm.
Stop Feeling Like Shit fast track kind of program you're doing now. We can talk about that. But perfectionism, control, self sabotage, numbing,
Yeah.
and uh, yeah, overachieving. So I was like hitting all those
Blame.
boxes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, blame's another big one. Isolation is
Mhm.
one of them, and that means, like, not reaching out for help at all,
Right.
just not diving into the emotions. Yeah, there's 14 of them, and that came from shame work, being trained in
Hmm.
shame work.
Yeah. But I guess my big question to you about that is, would you say that the numbing, if you're doing it with alcohol, that has to be something you look at first before you can really take a look at those other coping mechanisms?
Yeah, so here's my answer to that. I get
Mhm,
this question a fair amount, and the question sometimes looks different. Sometimes people just say like, "Where do I even begin?"
mhm.
Whether we're talking about the 14 habits in this book or personal growth in general. There's lots of different entry points. So I always tell people one of two places, or actually one of three places, I should say. So there's your negative self-talk. Like, how do you speak to yourself? Are you kind? Do you
Yes.
beat yourself up? Start there. The other one is around values, good foundational work, what's important about the way that you live your life. And then when you find out all those things, are you actually living it? And then bridge the gap. The third thing is, do you have any addictions? Because if you have any addictions, I would absolutely start there, because
Yeah,
you are going to run around in circles in your personal growth, and you're not going to get very far if you keep coming back to this one, whether it's a process addiction like love addiction,
right.
codependency, or if it's a substance addiction like food, drugs, alcohol.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is when I first came to you, I just wanted you to give me like 8 easy steps to how to stop feeling like shit. I did not wanna go deep. I didn't wanna think about it. I didn't wanna become aware. I didn't wanna be curious,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
said that would be such a disservice if I did just give you 8 steps,
Mhm. And I could
because
do it.
you have to go and be aware. Right. You could.
Yeah. And this is something I learned when I was a personal trainer. I don't know if you ever had a mentor or anyone that told you this, like, we can't want it more than our clients.
Yes, I
Like,
was a
we
personal
can't.
trainer too. I get that.
Yeah. Like, and coaching is the same. I cannot meet a client in the depths if they are not willing to come with me.
Right.
And there is no judgment at all
Mhm.
for someone that's not ready. I thought about quitting drinking years before.
Mhm.
And even like, things like someone leaving their marriage. Like on average, women who leave marriages have been thinking about it for on average of 6 years before they go.
Right.
So you're going to be ready when you're ready, whether
Mhm.
that comes to quitting drinking or leaving a relationship or leaving a whole ass career. There's my hope is that no one feels ashamed or judges themselves
Yes.
if they kind of know that the answer is quitting drinking or going into the deep end with their therapist or whatever, and they are procrastinating and slogging along. That's okay. You'll get there when you're ready.
Yeah. That message really resonated with me because the shame piece, I was so stuck in that. So that's why a big part of my coaching is helping people to understand how alcohol works. It's not your fault. It's
Mhm.
chemistry, the way it changes our brain chemistry
Yes.
and how our
Mhm.
brains are neuroplastic. Because being the personal trainer, I really like that physiological angle. And that helped me to
Yep.
understand, okay, I can change this. I can make different choices, and not be in shame. So what you taught me about shame, just keeping me stuck, has really continued now in my own coaching because I know
Yeah.
how important that is.
I'm so glad
Yeah.
you said that. And like, what a beautiful thing to tell your listeners. And it's not, I want to say this too, for people who are like, oh my God, we're not talking about shame. It's not even necessarily that you need to go into therapy and have, like all these deep somatic
Right.
visualization, like go back through the birth canal and like big things. Or even like I take people through shame resilience
Mm-hmm.
program, learning about it. And it's very intellectual, but
Which I love.
sometimes just understanding that your excessive drinking is underpinned by shame, your need for control is
Control.
the bus is actually being driven by shame. And I'll just say this, and I say this in the introduction of this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you're walking around feeling ashamed all the time. Most people don't.
Right.
It's that the behaviors that you're engaging in, the poor boundaries, the people pleasing, the control, the perfectionism, self sabotage, numbing out, we do those in an effort to avoid shame, to
Yes.
avoid criticism, to avoid judgment from ourselves or others, to avoid failure,
Mm-hmm.
to avoid the really difficult, uncomfortable feelings that come along with all of that. That's shame is at the root of it. Shame is at
Yeah.
the root of most things. And so sometimes even just being aware of it, that it's there, is enough to squelch it a little bit. Because
Right.
shame hides, it thrives in secrecy. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm on a mission to like, oh, let's just talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who wants to talk about it with me?
Yeah, let's just that helps so much to be vulnerable. That was another
Yeah.
concept that I was like, "Ooh, I don't want to be vulnerable. That's dangerous." You
Yeah.
know. But then experiencing someone going, "No, let's just talk about it." And okay, so you think you're drinking too much. So what would you like to do? Why do you think you're doing that? That kind of thing. And that just made all the difference in the world because I had grown up. I'd been up in a family that was like, "Oh no, you're not vulnerable. We're Irish. We're Italian. We don't talk." No, you know
Yeah.
and I hear that so
Yeah.
much.
Especially people our age who were raised
Yes.
by the generation before us. A lot of us were raised by silent generation. My parents were.
Yes.
They had little to no tools at all. So they survived by sweeping everything under the
Mhm.
rug, by pretending that things were okay, by not talking about the big stuff. That was their coping mechanism.
Right.
And it worked for a while,
Mhm.
and some of them it impacted them more than others. So it's like this isn't to blame and shame
Nope.
how we grew up or anything like that. Everybody did the best they could.
With what
But
they
at the end of
had.
the day, shame is the thing that anytime I ask that question that I ask at the end of the intake, if somebody puts something there, I've had people say that they're questioning their sexuality.
Mhm.
I've had more than one client say that they're thinking about leaving their marriage, but no one knows except maybe like their therapist.
Right.
And I would say 100% of the things that people put on that question are in shame. They're
Right.
ashamed of it. And that's why they haven't said anything to anybody. So everybody listening
Yes.
who might be thinking about what they would put on that, it's probably shame.
But here's the thing, when you're drinking that particular or drugs, coping mechanism, you get a backlash of shame from doing that as well.
Right.
So the shameful thing you're trying to avoid, you drink, or at least most people, if they drink too much on a regular basis, they
Mhm.
feel a lot of shame around that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a cycle. It's a cycle that's a 24-hour-ish cycle. So it's like I don't know what your drinking career looked like at the end, but for me it was like I would wake up in the morning and feel physically not great because of
Hmm.
drinking so much, but more like mentally and emotionally, that's where it
Yes.
would hit me.
Me
I
too.
would feel terrible, and feel that like a little tap on the shoulder of two things. This is too much, and also the trajectory that this is going is not looking good. That scared
Right.
me more than anything. That
Me
even gives
too.
me goosebumps to say out loud.
Hmm.
And then I did a little bit of research and found out that women tend to have a faster trajectory to alcoholism,
Hmm.
I'm using air quotes,
Yep.
than men do because of the way that we metabolize sugar. And DUIs are on the rise with women. I saw that statistic and I was
Hmm.
like, I'm going to put that away and not think about it anymore. So that's shame. So then I would vow to either cut back or not drink at all that day.
Right.
I'm like, I cannot drink on a Tuesday. Like, come
Hmm.
on. Like I can do hard things. So then 5 o'clock would come around and I would get the itch and the anxiety would start to rise a little bit. And then I would say, oh, I need to go to Trader Joe's just to get some garlic. And like, oh my gosh, there's this
There's
wine
some
here. I'm just
wine
going to get a bottle. Like,
on
it's no big deal.
sale. Right.
And then I would drink, and then this whole cycle would start over again. So that
Hmm.
went on for probably years, a few years.
Yeah. No,
It's
definitely.
miserable.
That's very common cycle. Exactly. And, you know, there's a chemical reason for that. I often talk about that, why that happens. But we're just stuck in this cycle and we think, well, how am I going to get out of this? And do I really want to get out of it? Because what does
Yeah.
that look like if I stop doing this behavior? You know, how do I deal with my stress or my transition into the evening or the marriage I'm not happy in, or the job I want to leave or the fact that my dad just died? And that's the
Yeah.
other piece of it. And so helping people to, which I know you do all the time, is how to replace that unhealthy coping mechanism. What are the other things you can start to learn how to do?
Yeah, and here's the thing that I wanna and you've probably talked about this on your show or on the socials, is the difference between sobriety and recovery.
Hmm.
I think they're two very different things.
Hmm.
Anybody can just abstain from alcohol.
Yep.
It might not be easy, but anybody can do it. Recovery is very different. So the way I define that is sobriety is just the abstinence of, in this case, alcohol. Recovery is where you actually do the work, the mental and
Yes.
emotional work of looking at why you thought that drinking was going to solve the problem in the
Hmm.
first place. And recovery is looking at what the problem is that you were trying to solve.
Yep.
And that is where it becomes complex for a lot of people, and it has legs and arms. And yes, it I can guarantee it will have to do with your childhood.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah. Yeah.
parents. All the hard things and all the uncomfortable emotions, but the really good news is that you don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
You
It's a
can baby step
process.
in. It's a process, and there's many wonderful people who will support you, and there's millions of us in long-term recovery that will
Hmm.
welcome you with open arms and be very understanding. And there's no story. I heard a story about this alcoholic who just some of the grossest things you hear, especially in AA meetings, and everybody's like nodding around the table, like, "Yep, seems reasonable." It's like the lengths that people go
Yeah.
to stay in their addiction is wild. But anyway, all that to
Yep.
say, recovery is possible. It is not easy, but
Yes. It's
in my
work.
opinion, it is 1000% worth it.
And you change and you grow
Yeah,
and you become this other person. I'm still amazed at the layers that keep unfolding for me and the new opportunities. And
it
I'm
makes me
having a
so
podcast.
happy.
I'm talking to
Yeah,
you, Andrea Owen, on my
look
podcast.
at
Like I never
you.
thought that would happen.
It's so awesome. Well, I think it's such a testament to um getting over that hump
Yes.
of fear. That and here's how I describe it for people. Like you get to a point where like both options kind of suck. It's like,
Yes.
do I keep drinking and I know kind of where that's going to end up and it's
Mm-hmm.
not good, or do I quit? And that's scary as all hell,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know what's in Pandora's box that I'm
What that
about to
looks like.
open sober. And so you have to get to a place where the thought of continuing to drink and not knowing where that's going to take you, but kind of knowing it's not going to be good, that fear is a little bit more than the fear of trying out sobriety and recovery.
Right.
Like it's just a tiny tipping point. You just need to get to that place and that crack in the door and walk through it. And the thing is this is one of the things I love about Alcoholics Anonymous. Definitely has its problems, but
Mm-hmm.
one of the concepts I love is that they take it one day at a time. If you are thinking about quitting drinking, don't worry about the rest of your life. Don't even worry about the rest of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't drink tonight. Just lay your head on the pillow tonight when you go to bed, having not had a single drink. And that's the goal. That's it.
Yeah, because future forecasting or if saying when clients first come to me on a discovery call, they're like, well, I can't say never. And I'm like, don't say
Mhm.
never. I don't say
Yeah,
never.
I
I
don't
just don't
either.
say that word. I'm just not drinking anymore or today.
I'm
And
not drinking today. Yeah.
yeah, that's really it. Take that pressure off the table. You know, I love in your book, and I think this is important. You talk about the difference between comfort and numbing, and
Yeah.
because, and I want to cut us all some slack because we were very much marketed it to that this is how you relax, this is sophisticated,
Yeah.
this is the mommy wine culture, this is what we do, but when it crosses the line from comfort to numbing out, that's a big difference. Can you talk about that? You go into it in your books a lot.
Yeah. So a lot of the self-care measures and the comfort measures that people use are often the things that they use to numb out. So for
Right.
example, if someone can have a glass of wine at the end of the night and it kind of takes the edge off, which is a term I love to hate.
Yeah.
And they can really call it a measure of self-care,
Mhm.
and they can take it or leave it, except for some nights when it does become a numbing mechanism and they're like 3 or 4 glasses
Right.
in, heavy pours, and then that becomes a habit. So for some
Mhm.
people, it's also like scrolling through social media.
Right. There are other habits.
It turns off the part of your brain where you have to make decisions and you have to think about the world as we are right now. And then also it can become hours and hours of just
Yes.
dopamine hit after dopamine hit. And so my conclusion really is what I tell people is I can't tell you where the marker or milepost is for you. Only you know. And
Right.
that comes to listening to your intuition on what is serving you and what is not, and then experimenting
Mhm.
with it. And also like be kind to yourself because brain chemistry is very much a thing
Yes.
and dopamine helps.
Yes, it's a reward. It makes us
It
want to
is.
do the thing again. But I always tell people, I mean, I was drinking for 45 years, so don't expect that this is going to happen overnight. So there again
Yeah.
is that grace and self-compassion and curiosity and the experimental mindset. So important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What a miracle though, honestly, that you gave it up after a 45-year drinking career.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Well,
is. It
it
truly
was,
is.
looking at my future self, not liking what I
Mhm.
saw, feeling so out of alignment with a health and fitness person, and then living this whole other life because I was a binge drinker. I'd really binge on the weekends. And I just saw that that was not going to last. And mentally, I was going down the tubes, the depression, the
Yeah.
anxiety. And so making those connections and getting really informed on like, okay, alcohol induced depression, alcohol induced anxiety are real
Anxiety.
things,
Oof.
you know?
Mhm.
So you
Yeah,
have to become
very much.
informed.
You do, and I think that we are making some progress there. The needle is
Hmm.
moving, and
Yes.
people talking about how it's poison, it's a carcinogen,
Toxin.
and none of that information was out when I got
Right.
sober,
Right.
and even just like the mommy wine culture movement was just starting
Hmm.
out. So for me, it really was just about my intuition, and also thankfully, my father, who passed away in 2016, got sober when I was 18 in 1993, and I saw what it
The
meant to be
difference.
a high functioning alcoholic. And even
Hmm.
back then, I was so illiterate in terms of mental health. And, but it was a great example to me. And he stayed sober until the day he died. So I did see
Right.
that there could be people who didn't look like a kind of stereotypical alcoholic.
Right.
So that was helpful too.
That's what I mostly work with, that kind of person. Um, I want to say behind all of your work and what you do, like I think you're such a badass, and you're all about empowering women. And I think
Mhm.
what I've learned throughout my own experience and now coaching people is alcohol is so disempowering, and we're sold this bill of goods that it's empowering, it's Sex in the City, it's what sophisticated women do. And yet I think it is one of the most disempowering substances. I mean, there's so many bad things that happen with it, especially to women.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I think I also think that like what you're speaking to is in many ways alcoholism for women is a feminist issue
Hmm.
because it is something that exactly like you said, it is disempowering. It keeps us quiet.
Yeah.
It keeps us kind of like in our lane, and it prevents us from taking risks that matter to us.
Hmm.
And I'm not talking about situational, like on days that we're drinking. I'm thinking like overall,
Right.
if someone is eyeball deep in whether I don't love the term alcoholic
Right. I
because
don't really.
it's a label that I think we have a image in our mind of what that looks like, whether you are a gray area drinker
Right.
or a
Or
binge
alcohol use
drinker on the
disorder
weekends.
spectrum.
Like, yeah, if you're
Yeah.
in there at all on any part of the spectrum, you are not living up to your best self, your future
Yes.
self, your best version of
Potential.
yourself. Yeah, and it's like, what if at the end of your life someone came to you and was like, you know what would have made you like the best version of yourself if you had quit
Hmm.
drinking? It's like I didn't want that to happen to me. I was like, oh my God, like I don't know what's on the other side, but
Right.
that scared me more than anything. And that was my intuition talking to
Hmm.
me when I heard that message.
Well, you also do talk about faith, a belief.
Mhm.
You were brought up in a Christian household, so I was too. And so I really felt a sense that I wasn't living in alignment with my faith either, like that
Yeah.
God had so much more for me and I
Yeah.
was not experiencing it. And this
A
was the
hundred
thing that was
percent.
holding me back.
Yeah, and I went through like a pretty major spiritual transition,
Hmm.
where I don't, I'm no longer involved in organized
Hmm.
religion, but the thing that has never changed for me is the concept of some kind of higher power. Now I
Right.
call it, I might call it source, divine love. Sometimes I call it the universe. There's something out there bigger than us, and it's to me, it's love,
Hmm.
capital L, love. And it's the thing that connects us all. And it's the energy that we are all tapped into. And alcohol muted my connection
Yes.
to my source. And
Yes.
and that was one of the unintended side effects of what I wanted to do was just numb the emotions.
Yeah.
And when you're numbing out, you're numbing everything. You're numbing
Everything.
your whole life. You're numbing your intuition. You're numbing your connection to whatever you consider a higher power. That all goes away. That's what
Yeah.
you're sacrificing. And I think for a lot of people, when they're in that place of limbo, it can sound and feel so scary to let go of the thing that allows them to
Yes.
have this veil in front of them. Because I don't know about you, but I think a lot of people listening are probably like me, and they are deep feelers and they
Hmm.
are deep thinkers and they're deeply emotional. And because of that, they found alcohol and it just mutes it a little bit, just puts like a nice filter, like
Oh yeah. I
that's
didn't
all
want
I
to
wanted.
feel. Yeah.
Just a
Yeah.
little, just a filter, because it was so much. It was so, I felt like my emotions were like lightning cracking through me.
Yes.
I could
Love
not
that.
be with them at all. It was so overwhelming.
Hmm.
And to be honest with you, they still are. Like
Yeah.
that
But
hasn't
now you
changed.
learn to sit with them, the good ones, the
Yes.
bad ones, or I don't even want to call them bad, but uncomfortable,
The
you know.
really uncomfortable ones. Like I I thought they would kill me. They
Right.
were so overwhelming. I
Me
was like,
too.
surely this is going to kill me. I cannot stand another minute in this. And it was really because I didn't trust myself
Yes.
because of my
Yes.
my disconnection from source. I
Right.
didn't believe that in my own resilience, and I was afraid to be vulnerable and reach out for
Hmm.
help. Like those
Yep.
were the main things that were happening that caused me to drink instead of take the veil off.
Yeah, exactly. And you're so right. You cannot selectively numb. You can't
Mm-mm.
just numb this little piece. Everything is going to get just dulled, a little grayer,
Yeah.
and you start to feel less. So I think that is such an important point. I love
Mhm.
everything that you share. Obviously, you've taken your pain and everything you've learned and you put it into all these books. I highly recommend all of them. If you want to know how to stop feeling like shit, I'd say start with this book. I mean, who doesn't want to feel that, right? But tell me, what else are you working on, or what's going on with you right now? You're so busy, so I'd love to hear what you're doing.
I am. I'm in a bit of a sprint because I have a book coming out with Sounds True in December that's called Live Like You Give a Damn.
Mm,
It's kind of straight up and down personal growth, 25 chapters, similar to 52 Ways to Live a Kick-Ass Life, but all new topics.
amazing.
And then I am hoping to self-publish another book that's a little bit more on the spiritual side this summer. We'll see.
Oh,
And then next year, I'm going to finally publish my memoir that's almost done. But I always have, group programs and one-on-one coaching. It's all at my website.
yeah, definitely check out AndreaOwen.com.
Thank you, dear.
Look into her books. Andrea, I just cannot thank you enough for coming on here. And again, for being the catalyst for me changing my life. And I just want you to know I'm so grateful. And now I do what I do because I so admired what you did. And I want to help
Mm,
people too, just like you helped me.
thank you. I mean, it is a privilege. And again, I'm humbled and so grateful that by you choosing me and me just following my intuition,
Hmm.
asked you the questions that I did in order to get you to the conclusions that you did. And then
Yes.
now you're out here helping other people, other women look at their drinking a little bit more closely and really grab their life by the shoulders and live it.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you ever Googled, "Am I an alcoholic?" Me too. And here's the thing, it's not a helpful question. Those quizzes just slap on a label. Yes, you are. No, you're not. But what if it's not about the label and more about how drinking actually makes you feel? That's why I created Am I Drinking Too Much? It's the quiz I wish had existed when I was searching. No scare tactics, no rock bottom required. You'll get your results and a free guide that explains gray area drinking, plus 3 science-backed strategies to reduce or interrupt cravings. Take it at soberfitchick.com/MI. That's MI, as in, am I drinking too much? soberfitchick.com/MI.